What is the easiest animal to start out with on a homestead? Why won't we vaccinate our goats for West Nile disease? And how do you age game birds like we did this last week without letting them rot, get infested with maggots, spoil the meat, and get your family sick? We're gonna answer all those questions. We're gonna give you an update about Homesteady, a way that you can support our show. And we're going to answer a whole lot more questions in today's episode of Ask Homesteady. Hey everybody, it's time for Ask Homesteady. This is the weekly show that we do where we answer the questions that you've left here on our channel. If you want to get a question answered on Ask Homesteady, it's pretty simple. We try to answer all the questions that have been left over the previous week. I may not get to all of them today because, as you might hear, I have a little bit of a cold and I wasn't even going to do this today, but I just hate not answering the questions you guys leave on this channel. So if you want to get a question answered, just put the question in any of our videos, hashtag it AskHomesteady. And for those of you who email me questions, I am notoriously bad about getting back to emails because I have a million of them and I hate email. I just hate, it feels like such a waste of time. Not your emails, just email in general. It feels like a life suck. I really suggest, instead of emailing me, just leave the question on the YouTube channel with the hashtag AskHomesteady. I'm 110% more likely to actually get back to you. Plus, you can help answer a whole lot of other people's questions by leaving your question on the public forum there on our YouTube channel with the hashtag, all one word, AskHomesteady. Please don't put space in there. People, I see people do it. Hashtag space, ask, space, homesteady. I won't find it. The reason we have the hashtag is so I can find it when I sit down to record this video. So let's dive into today's questions. No guarantees that I'm gonna last the whole hour and change that we usually do, that I'll answer all the questions today. We'll see how long my voice lasts. But we have some good questions. Let's dive in. I get asked from time to time, and I try to answer it from time to time. A Homestead Venture asks, does anyone know where Homesteady gets their music from? Always love it. So we use music that we don't have to buy the rights for each individual song, because when you create a daily video with like 3 songs, it would be a full-time job just finding the rights to each one of those songs. We have subscriptions to 3 different services that provide music and sound effects. These subscriptions cost us on average about $100 to $200 a year, each individual one. So every year I pay about somewhere between $300 and $500 in audio and sound effect subscriptions so that our videos have really good quality and that you enjoy them. The music cannot always be listened to on iTunes or downloaded. And when I find the music, the way that I log it, I download it from my subscription service, I put it in a folder. I no longer have the name of the artist or the actual track's name. I just have the download file, which a lot of times is not even something easily read. It's just the way that these websites work. So I never get back to people when they ask, hey, what was the song at minute 3:34? Sometimes people can actually Google the words and find it, and I always appreciate if you help out our other viewers that way. But it's one of those things that I just have this batch of music and I don't even remember who it's from or what. I'm sorry that I don't answer every individual request for each song, but it's just the way that it's part of the working process. So that's where I get my music from. Different sources online. Artlist is one of those. Another one, well, Epidemic Sound. So these are just some examples, and they're subscriptions. And the way we pay for that is through your support. So all the ways that you support our show help us produce this show. Whether you're a Homesteady Pioneer, which we had a question about, we'll get to later. Whether you shop through the Amazon, amsteady.com / Amazon, we'll talk about that in just a minute. Or if you watch the commercials that play on our videos here on YouTube, that also helps support us. So thank you for your support. Next question. This next question is gonna open up a can of worms. Woo! Here we go. I never let that stop me before. Lynn wants to know, we used to vaccinate our horses and goats against West Nile virus. Why wouldn't you just vaccinate your animals? Hashtag AskHomesteady. We talked about in a video a couple weeks ago how one of the bucks that we were going to breed to our does died of West Nile virus. And Lynn wants to know why we wouldn't just vaccinate our animals so that they wouldn't be at risk for West Nile. So that's a great question, Lynn. First off, let me lead with something that, again, will open up a can of worms. All our animals, we get them the shots that they should get. My dogs have been vaccinated. They have their rabies shots. They have a Lyme shot now that they get. I had a dog that died from what might have been Lyme nephritis. So that was really sad. So all my dogs get their Lyme disease vaccinations. They get leptospirosis because they're field dogs. They're out drinking puddles. Other animals that might pee or poo in that puddle could leave lepto, which can also kill your dog. I have lost too many dogs to too many crazy things to mess around with stuff like vaccinations and skipping them and winding up with a dead dog. So our animals do get vaccinated. I have no problem with the idea of vaccinating our goats against West Nile virus. So why haven't we, or why won't we? Because I can't find any information on it. So if you could let me know, Lynn, in the comments below, or if any of you have any information on how to get a goat. Now there is a vaccination for horses that has been approved, although it has not been tested for how effective it is, as far as what I could find. So if there's something good out there that I don't know about, and I know sometimes you can find stuff in other countries and things, yeah, I just haven't been able to find anything on it. And I did do some searching online, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So right now we have no plans to vaccinate the goats because we don't know of any good procedure to do that. But if you have information, leave a comment below and we'll look into it, because we had the goat over the other side die because of that. And yeah, I would definitely be interested if it was something that was an effective treatment that was proven to help with West Nile. I'd be interested in looking into it, and if it looks good, getting the girls vaccinated. Another good goat question Muggsy wants to know. He says, have you raised your Nubian goats for meat? What is a good age to butcher a Nubian buck, and how much would he approximately weigh dress out on the hook? We're purchasing some registered Nubian does for milk. They're first-time goat owners. And I would think I'd raise the bucks for meat instead of selling them. Would you sell the bucks or raise them up for meat? Pros, cons. Thanks for the great content. Great question, Muggsy. So one of the reasons why we have Nubians is because of all the homestead animals that exist in the world. I think they're one of the better dual purpose animals. And I've seen from the herd over the hill, my wife's aunts, they have animals that will do a gallon of milk a day, and the bucks produce large, meaty carcasses. They're just huge animals. If you can get a dual purpose animal like that off of Pennsylvania knotweed and weeds and hay and whatever's out there on the hillside, that's a good dual purpose animal. And I think your idea of raising bucks for meat instead of selling them is a good idea, Muggsy. It's one of the reasons we got Nubians. Now, some of your other questions are a little bit harder to answer, especially because no, we haven't raised our Nubians for meat yet. We have done meat goats. I've butchered my own meat goats, but they were never the Nubians that I saw over here. That's what we're going to be getting to once we have our girls bred, if we have a buck. So we'll have more content on that probably next year. But I did get you an answer, because unlike us over the hill, they do sell, Kay's aunts have sold bucks for that purpose, for meat. So I asked them about your question, and I have a good answer for you here. So let me pull up this email, and I will let you know what advice they said. So this is the answer I got. As a general rule, this is Kay's aunt talking. Most butchered mammals, it is half of live weight gives the hanging weight. So however heavy you've let your bucks grow, put that in half. That can vary somewhat by what people call hanging. Some leave the head on in the hanging weight, others don't. We don't leave the head for hanging weight around here. So traditionally what hanging weight is you kill the animal, you open him up, you gut him, and then whatever's left hanging there, that's your hanging weight. Traditionally what most people know. What Kay's aunt here mentions is that some people don't consider the head as part of that weight. What age do you want to butcher them? Well, that depends. We've heard of full-grown bucks being processed and some from 3 months on. Depends on what you want. Same for lamb. Some folks want small, others want more full size, and others prefer the mature which excludes me, since I really don't like mature unless it's seasoned spiced beef style, stick style, or other such processing. So what Kayzant's saying is, the bigger an animal gets, the more strong the flavor is. And while I haven't had lots of different goats to compare this to, I know this to be the case with deer. The older and more mature a deer, the stronger the flavor. And generally speaking, like a big old buck is going to have a real strong flavor that's not very good table fare unless you do what Kayzant said. You spice it, you season it, maybe turn it into something like a pepperoni or a salami or summer sausage. Nubians, she goes on, do take a spell to get mature and begin the smelly stage of their life. So they take a while to get big and smelly. So that will allow an individual to get some size to his buckling before processing if he desires a less mature carcass. Of course, what do they want? Since many are just going this route, no age will be wrong. Just a matter of learning what the family wants. As the saying goes, one man's junk is another man's treasure. So one's family tastes are another family's disdain. So some good advice there from someone with way more experience in raising Nubians for meat. Essentially, Muggsy, you kind of got to test it and see. But if you know your family to prefer more milder tastes, a younger will generally be the right fit for you. If you like deep, rich flavor and maybe adding spices and doing things with it, if you're a hunter, you're going to know the answer to this. If you prefer young deer and not a buck, well then you know you probably should go with a younger Nubian. But if you're not afraid of eating a big buck and turning it into something like summer sausage, that's an option for you. Hope that helps. And I think that covered everything you asked. Pros and cons. Would you sell the buck or raise them up for meat? Me personally, selling is so much more work than putting meat in your freezer. Selling, you gotta run ads and find a customer. They have to come here and look at it, and you have to shake hands and make sure that the people are happy. And if I'm raising bucks, unless it has a really high dollar value because it's something really special, it's just gonna go in the freezer. John wants to know about me, Kay, and the kids, orchard plans, more fruit tree planting, what types of orchards planned here, what are the good planting dates. A lot of questions by our Homesteady scholar, John Longnecker. Good questions, John. So more about me, Kay, and the kids. That's a tough one. That's so broad. Yeah, have to have more specific questions there. But as far as the orchard goes, the orchard plans for here, we don't have a really set idea yet for an orchard like we did back at Squash Hollow Farm. But I would like this fall, as John knows, John's a longtime viewer of Homesteady. He knows that we've always suggested the quicker the better to put in your fruit trees. Because they take so long to mature, Squash Hollow, we finally got around to planting an orchard and then we moved away. So I think here this upcoming fall, I'm going to talk to Dave from Northeast Edible. If you're looking for good orchard plants, Dave ships. This time of year he ships. If you're a Homesteady pioneer, you can get a 10% discount off of your order. 10% off an entire orchard could really add up. Dave also does consulting if you need help planning your orchard. He's the one who designed the orchard back at Squash Hollow Farm. It was a 6-month orchard, fruit for 6 months out of the year. From early in the season, we'd be getting berries, ever-bearing strawberries that would go all summer long. That was awesome. Clear into the fall with fruit trees. So check out Northeast Edible Orchard, I believe. It's northeastedibleorchard.com. He also has a YouTube channel where he gives you advice on your orchard. Check Dave out. Great source. I got to get a hold of him to get me some trees. I'm working on something you'll see for just a few trees to plant around the homestead. A couple apples, couple pears, maybe some strawberries. And until we have a better plan, I just want to put a few in the ground so that we can get the ball rolling, have some fruit growing here, because fruit does take such a long time to start actually yielding the results. But I believe it's a great investment in your property. No one ever goes to a property that's looking for a homestead and says, oh man, this place is covered up in fruit trees. I hate that. So if you ever sell your property, one of the nice things about our old farm, people who came to look at it were just thrilled that there was all these fruit trees on the property. And if you don't move, every year you'll get more and more fruit. From that tiny investment, you'll get more and more fruit every year. perennials are one of the best investments in the entire world, because you do the work once, you put them in the ground once, and you've planted a money tree. An apple is expensive, especially a good one. And every year, boom, up come apples, more and more. And the beautiful thing about a perennial garden is there is less and less work to it. You put it in the ground, and you still have to prune the trees, and they do get problems with pests and keeping deer away. It's not, nothing homesteading is easy. But compare that to an annual garden where you have to keep the pests away and do pruning, and then every year you get to restart. Perennials win for me. I thought this was a fun question that I just had to throw in here. Virginia, she has a daughter who is all about filming for her YouTube. Virginia, I wish you would have told me what your daughter's YouTube channel was, because I would have told people to go check it out. We could blow it up. But comment below. You can go ahead and put a link to your daughter's YouTube channel if you want to. Maybe you want to keep it private. That's fine. She asked, what entry-level camera setup would you recommend? What cheap/free editing app would you recommend? She's currently using an older GoPro, and she's 11. Virginia, an 11-year-old, so I have an 8-year-old, 9, 10, 11. A lot could happen in those 3 years. I can't really put my finger on the pulse of what an 11-year-old's abilities are, but I'm pretty familiar with an 8-year-old. And I used to have my cousin help me out on the homestead, who was probably, when he started, like 14 or 15 back in Connecticut. He was really into video editing. So the first thing I would suggest is you get yourself an old iPhone. A GoPro's not great because a GoPro's audio is really going to be crummy, and nothing's worse in a YouTube video than bad quality audio. GoPros are great for getting B-roll and weird shots and putting it underneath a cow and letting it walk all over it, or, you know, throwing it in the ditch while you're shoveling, whatever cool stuff you want to get. But you're not going to get video or audio. With an old iPhone, let's say it's time for you to upgrade. Give your daughter the old iPhone and download an app called Splice. I don't know if you can still get Splice, so while I'm talking here, I'm going to check and make sure that you can actually still get Splice. But Splice is a very, I think it was maybe $5, and it was a very good, very simple app that you could edit on your phone. Let me see here. So what you would do is your daughter would film her entire vlog on the iPhone, film it horizontally, no vertical videos here. She can get the vlog, then she flips it around and she films this back and forth. She gets it all on the phone. And then if you download Splice, let's see if it's still Splice. Sure is, Splice Video Editor. I already have it on my phone. I'm not sure how much they charge for Splice. Let's see if they charge. Whatever they charge, it's probably not too expensive. And I think I got it, I think it was like $5 or something. But it does great. And I actually think GoPro owns Splice now. GoPro kind of bought them out, which didn't do much for it. It was a good product to start with. And she can include her GoPro videos if she has a GoPro, because she can upload them to the iPhone and throw them in the video. But Splice is just, it's very user-friendly, and it's very simple, and it'll get you off and running. Now, if she's a little more advanced than the iPhone and Splice, the next thing you want to go for, camera-wise, if you're still looking for an inexpensive kind of starter, get yourself like a Canon point and click. Upgrade the audio on that by getting a Rode microphone, the $100 Rode that plugs into the microphone port. It's what I use. It's a great workhorse. For $100, it does a really good job. Whatever your budget is, Canon will make a nice point and click video/photo camera that'll do a really good job. And for video editing software, if iMovie comes with a Mac, if you have a Mac, that's a great way to go to get started. If you have a Windows, I think Windows Movie Maker comes with Windows. Again, it's an okay place to learn. Now, if you're looking at, if she gets really into this and she wants to like do the vlog thing like this, you can't go wrong with getting Premiere. Is a great video editing software. It's what I use. It is expensive. It's $50 a month. So that's where she becomes like, you know, so into this that She's looking at it as a possible way to make a living when she's a little older. I was making videos through high school because I loved it. Get her started now, get her all the tools she needs to get really good at this, because I turned into my own business by the time I was 27. I was making a living for my family, making videos. Not doing the vlog, but making videos for businesses, their marketing videos and for the internet and that sort of thing. It's a great way to make a living. It's a very creative way to make a living with all the ways that robots are kicking jobs out of the future. If you think about it, waiters and waitresses, they're going to be replaced by ordering kiosks like they have at Chili's. They'll have robots driving through the restaurant to bring you your food. They're going to have robots to do all the stuff at the supermarket, restocking shelves, checking out. You can see it more and more with automation. Jobs that don't take much thought, that are kind of repetitive tasks. Robots are cheaper and getting better every day. If you want your 11-year-old daughter to get involved in something that she'll forever have an opportunity to make a good living doing something she loves, video is an awesome route to go for that. Because even if a robot, they have already video programs that will throw a video together really quick, but they're never going to tell a story. I shouldn't say never. The artificial intelligence could, be created and suddenly, boom, Siri's making good videos. But until that day comes, and when that day comes, we have a whole nother set of issues to worry about. Until the AI exists and it's making good videos, for your daughter's lifespan, getting her into video, getting her well equipped, letting her just fuel that passion. Creative jobs are not going to be replaced by automation. You cannot automate creativity. You cannot program creativity. You can get a robot to spit something out that looks creative or might sound creative based off an algorithm, but it's not going to capture the human element, that human emotion. So if your daughter gets really good at video editing, she could have a job for the rest of her life that she's passionate about. She could always have work. She can become self-employed very easily. So really, fan the flames of that. Get her as equipped as you can afford to and keep upgrading. A good vlog setup. So Canon has the Rebel package now. It gives you the Rode mic, the point and shoot DSLR that does video with the flip screen. The Canon Rebel is a great starter. It's expensive, but it's a great way to go if she really gets into it. Get her a really good video editing software so she can dive into that. I had Premiere when I was I think I was 14 when I got Premiere. And at the time I bought it in a third world country where you could buy it for like $10. And it was at the time like $1,000 program. But there it was on the shelf of this third world country. I bagged it real quick. But if you want to sponsor your daughter and let her really take off with this $50 a month to get your kid, people pay that much to put their kid in school sports and that other kind of stuff. So fuel that fire, let her dive in, get really good at this, and forget, she won't even need to go to college. I didn't go to college, and I built a business where I was making 6 figures a year doing audio video, no college, no debt, all that money just for my family, doing what I loved, making video. That could be your daughter's future if you really fan those flames right now. So to go back, what we said, start her off with Splice and an iPhone, get that passion going. The next upgrade, point and shoot Canon, Windows Movie Maker, or iMovie is the next step up. Get a little bit more into how to do this, and then when she really loves it, get her the Canon Rebel, or if you really want to set her on the right path, a Canon 80D is what I shoot on. It's a workhorse. It does so good, the video and audio out of that thing. And Adobe Premiere. And with that, I mean, you can run, like I said, a very good business with a Canon 80D and Premiere Pro. Way low overhead, and you can make a lot of money doing it, and you can enjoy it. It's creative work. It is going to be a flooded market because everybody's out there doing vlogging now. So there's that issue too. But if she's really good at it and she knows how to, sell that, she can make a good living from that once she reaches adulthood. Or she can just have a really good passion in audio and video. And one of the nice things about someone who's passionate about audio video is every family event, you always have a really nice video. Every family trip, there's good memories, you can watch and enjoy. So that's good too, even if it's just a hobby for her. The next question, Fiona wants to know, what broadheads do I use on my arrows. So for those of you who've seen me bow hunting, you buy your arrows, and then at the end of the arrow, they come with a practice point, which if you shot somebody or some animal with that practice point, it would really hurt them. And if you shot an animal with a practice point through the heart, it would kill them, but it wouldn't do a very efficient job of it. What you do when you're hunting is you screw on a broadhead, which is like the old arrowheads you used to see Native Americans used. They're big, they got big knives, they're essentially just razor blades. You can get ones with 4 blades, you can get ones with 3 blades, you can get a 2 blade, one up, one down. You can get ones that open on contact, ones that are just always open and fixed. I have no suggestion for you. All I can tell you is that I've experimented for the last 10 years and I've never found the right one for me yet. I every year try something new. I often go back to muzzies. They're a fixed blade broadhead that work every time. If you hit that animal in a good spot, there's going to be a good blood trail, and the animal will die and you'll find it. But muzzies for me, sometimes past about 30 yards, get kind of wonky in their arrow flight, and I like to have an arrow that flies true out to 60 or 70 yards. I wouldn't shoot an animal that far, but I just want to know that my arrow is going to do what I want no matter how far it's flying. So this year I am trying out Schwacker broadheads. I haven't shot a deer with one, as you know. You would know if I got one. I've never seen it work yet, so I can't tell you how the Schwacker broadhead works. All I can say is you will not be disappointed with muzzies. Just make sure to practice with them on, because you might find that after 30 or 40 yards they start to get wonky on you. But if you're just shooting deer at 20 yards, muzzies are a good pick. If you want to get into the expandables and the other ones, I'm still looking for the right one. But until then, I don't know. Crooked Antler Homestead wants to know, have I thought about getting a crossbow for my kids to hunt with? Yes, Crooked Antler Homestead, I have. And I have been looking into different crossbow options for youth. I think my son is about ready at the point where he could handle a crossbow and he'd be capable of harvesting his first deer with a crossbow. So I'm looking into it more. The next question, Crooked Antler Homestead, can I use Homesteady on the Amazon app on my phone? We're going to talk a lot about Homesteady today. We're going to dive into this because I've had a lot of questions. You guys are amazing. You viewers have been so supportive of our show, and Homesteady is one of those ways that you've been so incredibly supportive. So if you don't know what Homesteady is, when you type in homesteady.com in your URL bar, you will get forwarded to Amazon. All the shopping you do there doesn't cost you a penny extra, but we get a little bit of what you spend for sending you there from Amazon money that helps us produce this show. And it is about a quarter of the revenue that I make to feed my family, run this business, everything. Quarter of the revenue that I get from all this is from Homesteady. So it is very pivotal. I couldn't go without that. So thank you so much to all you. And some of you I've noticed have, just from what you've told me, you've changed your buying habits just to support us, which I thank you so much. And this is one of the ways people have changed their habits. So some people know that, hey, I can buy my groceries through Amazon and it helps Homesteady. Yeah, I could buy toilet paper at Walmart, but I could buy it through Amazon. I don't have to spend any gas going out there. I get a Prime membership and shipping's 2 days, pays for itself. That Prime membership, I have Prime, I love Prime. And it helps Homesteady. So people have changed those habits and do their grocery shopping through Amazon. Really helps us do this show. Another thing they've done with this question, Crooked Antler asks, they use the Amazon app to load up their cart, because you can't, as far as I know, I haven't figured out a way to get the app to work through our forward. Unless maybe you type it in your phone in the web browser and then it asks you to use the app. So you might type in homesteady.com in the web browser and then it will pop up, would you like to use the app? And then maybe it would work. But the way it's worked for some people on our channel is they use the app to load up the cart. They tell their family members, yep, go ahead, use the app, load up the cart. And then when it's time to purchase, they just sit down on the computer, open up that cart, one-click purchase, boom. But they type in homesteady.com first and it forwards them there. So that's the way to do it that works. I so appreciate taking the extra 10 minutes to do that, because it really makes a huge difference for how we can do this show 5 days a week, even when we're not feeling super well. So thank you so much for that support. We have another question on Homesteady. Let's get to that one too. Tina G said, do you have a Canadian Amazon link? I'd love to support Homesteady and use your link, but it says this item does not ship to Canada. Please check our other sellers who may ship internationally. Please check into this. Tina, thank you so much. You're not the only person who talked about this. Of course, superfan Tiru says the Homesteady link didn't work for Canada or the UK or any other version a couple months ago when they asked, or when Tiru asked. Well, good news. You guys have been, so many of you have been asking me, get Homesteady Canada, get Homesteady UK, get Homesteady Australia. I did it. I wasn't feeling good this morning. I wasn't even going to do a video. I was like, I got to do something. I can't just sit on my butt all day. So I did it. I started setting up Homesteady Canada, UK, and Australia. But now I need your help. So all you out there who've been asking for this, just asking me and prodding me to do it has been a huge help, but I need some of you to go an extra step, and that is today or over the weekend. If you have anything to buy on Amazon, it can be a very small item, it can be a $5 or $2 item, whatever it is, try Homesteady for these 3 places, UK, Canada, and Australia. Those are the 3 I started with. I got them set up. And there's 2 different ways to try this. First, you can just type in homesteady.com and see if it works. I don't think that's going to work, but you can try it. The next way to try it, to see if it works, is to go to our website, thisishomesteady.com. In the menu, the last item in the menu says Homesteady. If it's on your phone, it'll be the drop-down menu. If it's on your computer, it'll be in the horizontal menu. Homesteady. Click it. Boom. Up comes a new web page that I put together this morning. Very simple. Click here to shop through Amazon. Thank you. Big Amazon A. Click it. It should forward you, if you're in the UK or Canada, it should absolutely forward you on to your own local site, and it should work. Australia. This is one of the weird things with Amazon. They haven't included you in this one-click technology. Sorry, Australia. I would if you guys were there. I want you there. But apparently they don't have you in that yet. So what I did for you is underneath the big Amazon A, there's an international option, and you can click on UK, you can click on Canada or Australia, click on it, and that will forward you to your specific one, and that should work. If you're really interested in being a super nice human being this weekend, if you do this, email me, Aust@thisishomesteady. Say, hey Aust, just wanted to let you know, I tried it, I ordered these items on this day. And I would love that, because then I can check and see if it worked. I can see if I actually earned any money on that particular day. So if you say, hey, on Saturday I ordered this many items, I can go and say, oh look, I earned some money on Saturday, it must have worked. I would really appreciate that if any of you could go the extra mile to email me, maybe talk to me, say, hey, I'm going to purchase these items. I can check and see what sells. It would be so nice if I could find out if this was actually working, because so many of you have been asking about it, because it's a great way to support us. If you love this show, if you never want it to go away, this is a full-time job for me. I don't have another job. I don't take clients anymore. Producing Homesteady is my entire career, and it's how I feed my family. It's how I pay for the music and the computers and the cameras and all the equipment, the drones that we take all our video with. It's how we pay for the animals. I just spent this morning, we just purchased $500 worth of cow semen so we can AI these cows, and that came from you guys, all you who support this channel in whatever ways you do. That $500 for semen for cows, thanks to you. That's why you're going to have a video about AI and cow semen and the new semen. We ordered some new semen. We'll update you on that soon. Different cows. We're going to try some different things with the AI. And going long in this one, but it's just something that's been asked a lot lately, and I kept telling people I'd get to it, and I'd get to it. I got to it. Thank you so much for caring about supporting the show. If you haven't, Homesteady.com is the easiest way to support the show without spending a penny extra. And if you live in the United States, all you have to do is www.homesteady.com in the URL bar, and it will forward you there instantly. You don't have to worry about any of the stuff I just said. But for you international, UK, Canada, Australia, you got to go that extra step of going to the website, clicking in the menu. If you do that, I would be so grateful. So thank you so much. And if you're not in those 3 countries, but you use Amazon and you'd like me to set yours up because you'd like to help support our show, thank you so much. Email me, message me, whatever. Say, hey, set it up for Japan, and I'll do it. I just haven't had anybody ask me for Japan yet. So for all you Japan viewers, you let me know and I'll set it up for you. I do think it's incredibly empowering to think about, we live in this time where now we can control our media. We can control what programs we watch. For so many years, we complained, there's nothing on TV. 900 channels and there's nothing on. It's all garbage, nothing you want to watch, right? Well, now we don't have to do that. I don't watch TV. I don't have cable. I'm a cable cutter. But at night, if I want to watch something, I got my YouTube channels that I support in whatever ways. Some of them, I'm a member of some YouTube channel and podcasts, like the Homesteady Pioneer Program. I'm a member of some of those. Other ones I buy through their links, support their Amazons, because it's a way to support content creators creating the content you like. So you can create the content you like. If this is a show you like, you can help make it keep going. We can stop complaining about what's on and enjoy the media that we like, and don't worry about all that other stupid stuff on the television. We have a lot of questions about hunting this Q&A because I've been covering hunting so much. Major Victory wants to know, after you butcher an animal you hunted, do you give your dogs the parts you don't keep? Good question. And for that, it's kind of a depends. Some people actually feed their dogs a raw diet, and they look for people who hunt and farmers to get meat from and bones from and that sort of thing. My dogs, my hunting dogs, are a finely tuned machine that I don't like to mess with. Usually I do not give them scraps. I usually do not give them extra meat and that sort of thing. I did do the raw meat diet with venison with my dogs for a time, and I found because venison is so lean, there's no fat on it, the dogs were getting too skinny. Actually, at the time it was just bones, and he was just getting too skinny, and my vet said, nah, this isn't working. So you can give it to them in addition to some other food, but just venison, it was just too lean to fuel my pup, especially through the winter. So if I have venison, like the stuff I trim that isn't fit for people, I can give it to them as a treat, a little bit of extra. I do not give it to them with the bones. I don't like risking a bone with my dog. Even an uncooked bone, that some people will tell you not to even give them uncooked bones because they can still have problems with the bones. Some people do, and don't worry about it. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying my dogs they're a big investment of time, money, effort, all those things. And I don't mind just giving them regular food with, if I give them a little bit of cut venison as a treat. The birds, I don't give them bird bones ever, even if they're uncooked bird bones. I don't give them any of the chucker or the pheasant. I don't want my dogs linking the pheasant with food because they're not supposed to eat that bird. They're supposed to bring that bird to me. So for birds, they don't get any of that for treats. That's all mine. The venison is the only thing I ever consider giving to the dogs as treats. And I do that, but it's always off the bone, and it's just an addition to their regular food, not to replace it. And Major Victory also said, I'd like to see you butcher, and I'd like to see you hunt and field dress a deer. So would I, Major Victory. So would I. Not been a great season so far. We'll get there. We'll get one soon. Gun season's coming, and we're not going to have any problem during gun season. I've had lots of deer encounters this season. Just everything's been 40 to 60 yards, which for a gun is no problem. For a bow, I prefer to wait till they're into that 30 yard and below. T-Rear wants to know, why does Bones have a white patch on his nose? I've never seen white fur on a purebred lab. Is he mixed with a Nova Scotia duck, tolling retriever, or some other breed? He is a purebred lab 100%. The white nose is an anomaly. Even his breeder, every time he sees it, he goes, oh, that's so cool. I love that. It's like he dipped his nose in bleach. Don't know why it's there. It's on his nose and it goes up his face, that like white patch. It's kind of cool. I don't know why it's there, but it's cool. I have no other answer than that, T-Roo. Clarissa wants to know, what are the easiest animals to start with on my homestead? Well, Clarissa, I'll explain it all. Am I too old for you for that reference? Anyway, easiest animal to start with, I would say, would be probably what everyone would say, which is what Kristen Kennedy said. Chickens. Chickens are a great place to start. It's hard to say any other animal. I thought about this a while. There are other animals that can be easy and based off what you have, good to start. But the reason chickens just kind of rule all is because, for one, they're the most popular. So many people have chickens that don't have any other things. So that means anything you need, you can run out to the local Tractor Supply and get. If you suddenly need something for their health, you can get it. If you suddenly need something for their coop, their bedding, their feed, whatever, and because you're a beginner, you're going to suddenly need something. Because you have no history with animals, you're not going to know everything you need, and one day you're going to realize, oh man, this chicken's getting pecked by all these other chickens. I need something for that. Guess what? You can run to Tractor Supply and get Blue Coat like that. Problem solved. Whereas if you have goats and suddenly you need some weird goat medicine, they're probably not going to have it at Tractor Supply. So it's just one of those things where it's just everyone has them. There's supplies and stuff you need, and they're pretty hardy. They're going to turn out eggs. You're going to get a good return. They're just a great starting place. There are other options and other animals that are good too, but they just take a lot more. Like, for example, I mean, cows have been one of the easier animals that we've owned, but a cow is a huge animal. You're not going to be confident starting with a cow, just walking into a big old cow. Honestly, I think cows are easier to own than goats have been for me. They're probably easier to deal with than the pigs were, but they just take a lot more confidence and knowledge, and they're a big investment. You don't want to spend a lot of money until you really are good at animal husbandry. So chickens, again, if you lose one, your investment in a chicken's, $10, $20. It's not a big loss for you to learn how to be better at animal husbandry. I don't think ducks are a good starting point because ducks are super messy. They might be a better option for a homestead than a chicken, but only once you have chickens under your feet and you know how to deal with them, then you can make the leap into ducks, I feel. Other animals, goats are kind of a tough one to start with. Pigs aren't as bad, I think, as goats. I actually think pigs are easier, but still a lot to deal with. Your first time through, they get very big. So you just can't get too much easier than chickens. Quail are an awesome option for both meat and eggs. And if you saw in the video not too long ago where we breasted out the chucker, it butchered in 2 minutes, and the butchering was done on that bird. That's how you butcher a quail. You breast it out, pull that out, and you're done. So you can butcher a ton of them really fast. You can get eggs from quail. They're a really good all-around one, but you need a little different equipment for quail, which we're talking about maybe doing quail over the winter, so stay tuned for that. You need some different equipment for quail. Not everyone around you is going to have that kind of equipment, the knowledge. Chickens are just a really nice one to start with. So start with some chickens, Clarissa, and after that, then maybe get into some other stuff. Barefoot Backyard asks, when you butcher your ducks, do you wax, pluck, or skin? I can't remember if you've waxed a duck or turkey in the past. It looks super, super messy. I have 11 ducks I need to do, but have only ever butchered rabbits, and I'm not very confident. Barefoot Backyard, I have some bad news for you. Butchering rabbits compared to butchering ducks, you are going in the wrong direction. Butchering rabbits is one of the easier animals to butcher. Butchering ducks is probably one of the hardest. I do not like butchering ducks. I have done it in the past. 11 will probably take you 2 days if you try to pluck them. It is so much work plucking a duck. We did the wax method, and we've also done it plucking by hand without the wax. The wax method is a very nice, clean way to pluck a duck, but it takes some serious learner curve. There's a real learning curve to it. You have to get the wax just right. You have to get it really covered and cooled quick. It's very messy, as is always butchering ducks. And ducks are just hard to process. The feathers do not come out like chickens. It's a lot more work. The down is a lot of work to get out. So if you're trying to pluck them, which generally you are for a duck, because if you skin the duck, you're gonna lose a lot of that fat and you're not gonna get that crispy duck. I yeah, it's a lot of work. So if you had a couple to do, I would suggest going the wax route, even though it's a lot of work, because at least at the end of the day, your finished product will be better. You will still take a lot of work plucking without the wax, but it will not look as nice. The wax does a really good job. You can get wax from like a craft store, that's what we've used. There's also wax out there made specifically for plucking waterfowl, and I suggest you find that. I think it's a black wax, and it's made for that. You can search it. I didn't use it when we'd used it. We used stuff from the craft store. But it's a lot of work. It is messy, but it does a better job than just plucking by hand. So I hope that goes okay. It's a ton of work. Duck's delicious. I have now come to the point in my life where I will just buy it because I don't like butchering ducks, which is a question we have here somewhere. Devin noticed that we sold all those Muscovy ducks except for that one sneaky duck who we have decided to name based off of one of your comments. I asked for name ideas. One of you said to name her Heidi because she hid from us on selling day. And we said yes, so that duck's name is Heidi. So we have Don and Betty Draker, and now we have Heidi Draker. Devin wants to know, why not eat the ducks instead of selling them? We sold the ducks. We made $5 a duck. We sold a bunch of ducks, more than 10. We made like 60, 70 bucks off ducks. Why not just keep them for ourselves? It's good meat. Why not eat them? I touched on this already. I hate butchering ducks. Ducks are so much work to butcher. Muscovies are impossible to pluck. I don't like to skin ducks because then you lose that nice fat that makes a duck so delicious. And here's the honest truth. I'm a hunter. I go out into the field and I shoot wild animals. I'm a farmer. I have killed and processed my own pigs. I've killed and processed my own goats. I've killed and processed my own chickens. I've killed and processed my own ducks. I have killed and processed so many animals. I am not a softie. I can handle that process. I'm not like, I don't love the killing and processing of things. It's not like I'm a weirdo like that. But I just understand it's required to feed my family, and it's a job I've taken on, taking the responsibility into my own hands. So I'm in the middle of that balance where, like, I don't love it. I wouldn't become a butcher for a living. I could not do that. But I also am not like, ew, I could never do that, oh. Like, I'm right in the middle there, right? Where I can just, like, I can feed my family. All the animals that my family eats, I've killed most of those and processed them, most of them myself. I hate killing ducks. Ducks are so cute. Those big bills, those big dark eyes, and the little toddle they do, and the quack, 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 quack. They're just such a friendly little animal. And you take that cute animal and you grab it and it's kind of scared, and quack, 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 and you throw it in the killing cone, and that big head, they have the long neck so they almost can like turn and look at you like, what are you gonna do? And they got those big eyes and they're looking at you like, ooh, and that bill. And they're just like this cute, nice animal. And every time I butcher ducks, I've done it twice, I just get so bummed out because I don't like holding the duck's head and cutting it. I hate doing that. They're just like this friendly little animal. I don't have that problem with chickens. Meat chickens are meat chickens. They're kind of, and I know this is very superficial, like the way an animal looks, like, yeah, you're not cute, I can butcher you. But I don't have that feeling with chickens. With chickens, I have no problem. They're meat chickens, that's what they're here for. I can butcher them. A wild animal, I'm not up close to. I shoot from afar. It's a different experience. And they're wild animals, and they would run me over and trample me in a second if they could. But the ducks are just, I don't know, I just have a soft spot in my heart for the ducks. And every time I've had to butcher them, I just feel like I get cranky and grumpy and mopey on duck butcher day. And I just feel like a bad person. You're not a bad person if you butcher ducks. I'm not saying that at all. It's how it makes me feel. So I got to the point in my life where I was like, you know what? They're really hard to butcher. I don't get the product I want from it because by the time I'm done, they still got feathers all over them and I get mad. And I just get sad on duck butcher day because I don't want to butcher my ducks. I like watching them toddle around. I don't want to butcher them. So, no more. I'm not butchering ducks ever again. I'm selling ducks and I'm downsizing ducks. I'm not going to keep that many because I can't eat their eggs. But I just don't like killing ducks. So good question, Devin. Good eating. If you're up for it, go for it. It's really hard work to butcher ducks correctly. But I don't like doing it, and I'm not doing it anymore. And that's one thing that's nice about having your own homestead. You know, take control of your food, take responsibility for it. But if you have some unreasonable feelings towards one particular animal that you don't want to butcher, guess what? You're in charge. It's your homestead. Use it how you need it. Don't butcher the duck. And that's what I've decided. I'm not butchering any more ducks. So, Aflac! I definitely have no problems with butchering pheasants. As we showed this week, I was butchering a pheasant. I got a lot of questions on the pheasant butchering. Can asks, any reason you don't dunk the pheasant in hot water like a chicken? So as you saw in the pheasant video, I had aged that pheasant for a week and then I was dry plucking it. And the reason I don't scald it and then pluck it is an aged bird, from what I've read, and I've read the source that I have found for a lot of my pheasant cooking is a source, honestfood.net. His articles are great. His recipes are awesome. Hank Shaw is the name of the guy who does honestfood.net. Great recipes, great wild game advice, and he says don't scald an aged bird. It doesn't work the same. He has tons of experience on butchering wild game. He's the one whose advice I took to age the bird in the first place. And so I took his advice. He said don't scald because it doesn't work like a fresh bird. It'll fall apart. I've never tried it because I trust his advice. I don't have to. Like I said, there were a lot of questions about butchering the pheasant, the way that you saw me butcher it and age it. Michael says not to critique, but to question. Why do you have to leave it unplucked and ungutted to age it? Can't you pluck it and gut it and age it in the fridge for a week? So Michael, yes, you can. You can pluck it and gut it and age it. So why didn't I? Well, let's go back to what Hank Shaw and a few other articles that I've read too talked about. Traditionally, the way it has been done for hundreds of years in Europe, when they shot upland game, they would hang it on the north side of the barn where it wouldn't get in the sun. The time of year they could hunt the birds, it would stay at the right temperature on the north side of the barn. The right temperature is 50 degrees. You don't want it to be too hot, you don't want it to be too cold. They would not gut it. And the reason why is having the guts inside, not gutting that bird, does a particular something to the flavor. And this is something that people have noticed in more than just one pheasant. It's something they've noticed for decades, generations. It's been done this way. I'm very much a proponent of scientific studies and good hard proof, but there's also something that's been done traditionally in a certain way for hundreds of years. You look to recipes of canned goods. If you have certain recipes for sauces and salsas and jams that have been handed down for decades and not killed a bunch of people, there's something to good tradition when it comes to food. And our idea of food safety, our day and age, is so sterile and kill everything and scald everything and burn everything because we don't want any germs, we don't want any bacteria. It hasn't been that way for the last, hundreds of years. People have been on the earth, hundreds and thousands. And so it doesn't have to be that way now. We're just all kind of scared of the idea of, that bird wasn't gutted instantly and scalded and bacterial disinfected and thrown into a refrigerator right away. That's scary. So traditionally, that traditional wisdom of aging the bird on the side of the barn, there's merit to that. That's what they did. Not gutting it enhances the flavor. Not plucking it allows it to not dry out too quickly. So Hank Shaw talked about, he tried this. He actually had one bird that had got shot up more, and so that one he wanted to gut and pluck. It got more dried out, but then he did mention in a particular recipe that it made for a crispier skin. However, if he has a bird that's in good shape based off the years that he's been doing it, he prefers to have the birds ungutted and unplucked. It keeps the moisture in the meat. Now, I can also relate this to the advice I've had on aging deer, which we'll talk about in a minute here too. We had a question about that. I always age deer with the hide on because it keeps the moisture in the meat. The more you pluck or take the hide off of that meat, oxygen gets to it, it dries it out, it discolors it. It's just all around not what you want to do. However, you can't do this with every pheasant. If you have a pheasant that's been gut shot, a lot of BBs in the gut and it's burst through the meat, then you can wind up with some messiness. You don't want to age that bird. You don't want to leave the guts in there. So if you have a good shot on a pheasant, the head, knock it out cold, the body looks to be in good shape, those ones you can hang on the side of the barn. You can age it, don't pluck it, don't gut it. Make sure it's in 50 degrees. You don't want it too hot because then bacteria, the ones that are scary, 55, 60 degrees, they start to more rapidly grow in that climate. You don't want it too cold because at 30 degrees, nothing's happening. There's no aging going on. It's a frozen bird, like a bird in the freezer. So try to keep it in that 55. And if you don't live in a place where you can get, 50 is 50. I've read 50 and I've read 55. I believe Hank Shaw talks about 50 degrees. If you can't keep a good steady temperature on the side of the barn somewhere, you can age them in a refrigerator. I did that last year. Don't do it in the refrigerator where all your food is. Have a spare refrigerator that you can set the temperature on to be just right. Hang them in that refrigerator and you're good to go. We're going to talk a little bit more about plucking birds. I've had some more questions here. Butchering birds. Debbie wants to know, don't they stink? Did you drain out the blood? It looks like the meat would have started rotting. So Debbie, when you age a bird, it is not rotting. What is happening when you age any meat? It is not rotting. What's happening is enzymes within the meat are breaking down the collagen in the cells, which is where the toughness is. That collagen breaks down on a bigger animal, an older animal. There's more of that collagen. So you want to, on an older animal, you definitely want to put age on it. That's why the best beef is all aged and hung. You've heard of maybe dry aging beef. This is the way you make good meat. You age it. It has a lot of flavor if it's older, but it also has a lot of toughness. So you have to break down that. It's not letting it rot. And the key is when something is rotting, the temperature gets too high where the bad bacteria that causes that stinky odor, that bad bacteria multiplies at a higher temperature. So the key to aging any meat is keeping it dry in the right conditions, the right humidity, the right temperature. And that will change based off certain meats and what your goals are, what you're trying to do. But for the pheasant, again, I've seen that temperature about 50 degrees. I do drain out the blood. When I shoot a bird or any other animal, the first thing I do is bleed it out clean. One of the reasons I do this is because table fare, if you cut up a chicken, one thing you'll notice from a store-bought chicken, if you look at the wings, you're going to see black lines on those wings. That is small veins that still have blood in them. It's just not appetizing. The reason you see that is because chicken processing done here in the United States is done, the chickens are supposed to be stunned first. Boop. When you stun an animal, the heart stops beating, then they're cut. They are bled out, but when you stun them first and then cut them, you don't get a thorough bleeding out as you might when you cut them while their heart is still beating. So a bird that's shot, generally the BBs fly through it, it'll bleed some. My dog brings it back to me. I keep a pair of shears on me and I cut it because I want to get all that blood out. Blood gives a different flavor to meat. Some people eat blood sausage and stuff, not us. We bleed out all our animals. We get that blood out. Same with wild game, all that stuff. Get it out there for taste purposes, for visual. Then the bled out bird gets aged. So I bleed it out, but nothing else. All the guts stay in there. All the skin stays on it. It doesn't rot because we don't allow the temperature to get up high where the bad bacteria can start multiplying a lot quicker. What's happening in the aging process is that collagen is being broken down by the enzymes already in the meat while not letting the bacteria that are bad multiply and causing it to rot. More answers on more questions in a minute here. There's so many questions. People were definitely kind of like surprised by the fact that I would hang a bird for a week, not do anything to it, and then feed it to my family, and nobody got sick. Here I am, we're all good. I'll be honest, every time I do it, I get a little bit like, really? This is okay to do? Oh, are we gonna get sick? But This is one of those things, hundreds of years of tradition. People are all good. There's merit to that. Zavia wants to know, when you butcher your animals and drain the blood, what do you do with it to keep from attracting predators? So generally when I butcher and bleed out an animal, like I said, wild game get bled out in the field right away. I get them, let the blood bleed out, and there it goes, it's left out there in the field. If I'm butchering animals here on the homestead and I'm cutting them, I have a bucket below with some sawdust in it. The blood falls out of the animal onto the sawdust, that absorbs it, and then later that gets thrown into the compost pile, flipped so that the blood is now down in the ground below the rest of the compost pile, and animals won't come and smell that and be attracted to it. If you just throw it in the woods, you're definitely going to get some animals interested. The idea of aging birds, game birds, sparks some questions on other kind of birds and animals. Lolita Bonita says, when you age deer, do you gutter the insides or leave them whole? Pretty sure that was an autocorrect on you there, Lolita Bonita. Do you gut the insides or leave them whole? So when you age a deer, you do not leave the guts inside of a deer that's aging. The reason why comes back to that rotting. We don't want our meat to rot, we want it to age. And so what we have to do is make sure we keep the meat at the right temperature. If it gets too warm, that's where the rotting starts. The bad bacteria that is all over the entire world can multiply quicker, feeding on your meat and the heat and all that stuff. And as it multiplies, that's where you get that nasty smell, and if you were to eat it, you would get sick. So you don't leave the guts in a deer because you could not possibly cool down that meat with all the guts of a deer. A pheasant is this big and has this much guts in it. It's not adding a whole lot of heat. So you can leave it in there, it's going to cool down just fine. It doesn't have a lot of down on it like a duck or a goose. A deer is a giant animal with a gut pile like this big. There's so much heat in there. You got to get that deer gutted as quickly as possible, which is why when you shoot a deer, as long as you've done a good shot and you know that deer's dead, you want to get on it right away, find it, open it up, pull out the guts, cool down that carcass. The quicker you cool that meat down, the longer it will be able to age and the better quality that meat will be, and you will not risk making anyone sick. So no, you don't leave the guts in, but do leave the hide on. Some people take the hide off. Who am I to say what's right or wrong? Nobody. I got a video coming out this fall. I should do it soon because it's pretty timely now. I filmed my butcher back in Squash Hollow. He was a butcher full-time. He ran a butcher shop for decades. His advice, professional butcher, was don't take the hide off. Leave it on. It keeps the moisture. It keeps the meat from being oxidized, which then has to get cut off because it's dark, gross color. So you'll get more meat and it'll be moister and better. Leave the hide on. You cool the deer down plenty by taking the guts out. The hide will not keep the meat too warm, but it will protect it from drying out and oxidizing. Hide on, guts out, open that carcass and put it in a cold spot. That's the best way. Deer you want to age kind of in the 40 degree, I believe he had his at like 30. It's in the video. I think he took his just over freezing. It was at like 35 or something, and he aged it for like 2 months. There was mold this long, like long hair growing on it, and that's okay. That's what he was looking for, that mold. You scrape it off, and it comes away as you clean it, and I had that venison. It was so tender and so much flavor. Aged meat is where you just get that so much flavor and value in aged meat. It can turn a bad quality steak into an amazing quality steak, just letting that age do the work for you. But for it to be safe, the temperature does need to be controlled. Otherwise, you will get that rotting. So make sure your temperature is correct, and that can change for different animals and different goals. This was a good question. I love a lot of the homesteader channels. I shouldn't say a lot of them, but I notice just in the homestead world, hunting doesn't get covered quite as much. And I love how many questions people have about hunting, because I really think hunting is a major part of homesteading. You read Little House on the Prairie, Pa was a big hunter. He was always out in the field because it's a lot of work raising livestock. And if I can go get a deer's worth of meat with one bullet from my rifle, That saves me a ton on time, feed, effort. There's a ton of meat there. Now, as you know, you've been watching me bow hunt. That one's not quite as efficient as rifle hunting is. I also just like bow hunting, so there's that. But hunting, if you're trying to feed your family good quality meat, hunting is an awesome way to do it. It's the first way we started feeding our family. Before we even raised our own meat, we hunted. Drew wants to know, he's wanted to hunt, but he never took the opportunity. He wants to try though. He says, I know when you're hunting something like a deer, you want to be careful where you shoot them so you don't hit the bladder and ruin the meat. When bird hunting, how do you avoid that? Seems almost impossible. We enjoy your videos. Thanks for all the great info. So Drew, it is true, if you shoot a deer in certain areas, you will ruin meat. But you got to think about the way this works. A bullet goes through an animal, it expands. That expansion causes mass trauma, which causes bleeding, and even blunt force trauma, which causes organs to shut down and kills the animal. A bullet sometimes kills the animal from bleeding, also sometimes just from trauma, destroying organs. If you shoot a deer through the guts, it's nasty. You don't want to do that. You want to shoot the deer through the heart. Some people want to shoot the deer through the brain or the shoulder. There are different opinions on the actual best spot to shoot a deer. But you definitely don't want to shoot it through the guts. You don't want to shoot it through the bladder. Yeah, you would try to avoid all that. A gut shot deer. Now, let's say you do. Accidents happen, and accidents happen even on a farm. I mean, you could be butchering 100 chickens and do one wrong. It happens. It's not just hunters who make mistakes. So you accidentally take a bad shot and it gets through the deer's bladder. Well, the meat isn't ruined. The whole deer isn't like, well, we got to throw this one out. Maybe some of the damage ruins locally some of the meat. It's bad smell, looks gross. The bullet tears through it and just pulls stuff through it. You don't want that on your meat. But it doesn't mean the whole thing is spoiled. It just means that little section, all right, we're not going to eat that. We're going to cut that out. It's a little bit of waste, but there's always waste. You learn homesteading, you never eat all of the animal. There's always waste. And that's okay. Chicken beaks don't taste very good. I don't mind that getting thrown away. It's okay to not use every bit. I'm very, very picky with my wild game. I want the best of the best. People have seen my pile of trimmings and frowned on it and said like, oh, I'd not cut all that off. But when I feed wild game to people, I want to inspire them to hunt themselves and think, wow, this is amazing. I don't want them to be like, ugh, why do you bother? This is gross. If you've had venison and you don't like it, you had badly processed venison. You had one of those guys who's like, I wouldn't have cut all that stuff off. Yeah, and your venison tastes like shoe, and when you serve it to people, you ruin the experience for them and they think venison is gross. Have some of my venison, you're going to love it, and you're going to forget about beef and just want venison. It's not entirely true. I also like beef. It's different, but venison can be so delicious when prepared properly. So now, with a bird, what happens? Do you get BBs? Yes. Remember though, you're shooting a deer with a rifle, one big lead bullet. A bird, you're shooting with a shotgun. Lots of little BBs go flying into that bird. Even if BBs wind up in the guts, they're not going to tear through the guts, and generally speaking, they're not going to then blow into the rest of the bird through the bones. You will find as you process your birds, BBs go through the meat. Sometimes they pull feathers into that. You can squeeze all that out. If you have a gut shot bird that was real close, real bad, and nastiness got into your meat, you'll see that and you can cut that away. But for the most part, the cavity on most animals is really good at containing the guts and whatever goes in there. So those BBs go in, but they don't go through the bones and then into the meat quite as much as you might expect. And when you're butchering it, you pull that breast out, you can see where BBs have traveled through. You squeeze out the feathers. If there's some parts that are ruined, you trim those away. But for the most part, you don't lose a whole lot because of something like it being a gut shot bird. The only reason that isn't good is if it is a gut shot bird, you don't want to age that bird because now all that bacteria has been spread through the bird. If BBs have traveled through and into the meat, they can drag whatever's in the guts with it, which is where more of that bad bacteria is. So you generally won't have much meat wasted, But you might not want to age a bird like that. You might want to clean it out, clean out your BBs, trim away wherever any BBs traveled through and feathers. And on a really well shot bird, if you have a bird that was properly shot, it's really, you're aiming for the head. So a good guy will be able, at one time, and I'm not a good shot, but one time I shot a bird's head clean off. It was just no head. So that's the ideal thing, because then the meat's all fine, the rest of the body's fine, and you just took out the head. When you're aiming, you are leading, you're watching the bird's head is what you're aiming for, not the body. So you try to avoid shooting up the body. Good question. Summer wants to know, do you plan to do any more homestead kitchen videos? I hope so. These are so awesome. So as you saw, we did the one this week with the pheasant, and we do plan on doing more homestead kitchen videos. Especially when we move, we'll have that kitchen over there as like a set kitchen to do videos in. But yeah, we'll do more. Kay loves to bake, and I'd love to film more baking videos. That would be really fun. She's a really good baker. Melissa wants to know, she'd love to see some of Kay's recipes and preserving and canning videos. Melissa, we actually don't do a lot of canning or preserving. We have done it with jams and jellies, but we don't grow many vegetables. That's not really our thing, and so we've never done a whole lot of canning videos. And as far as recipes go, Kay's much more of a baker than a cook. She's a good cook, but she likes baking way more. She doesn't really have any of her own, but she has some of her own recipes, but she relishes baking much more. So what you'll be most likely to see is videos of her baking. So if you like baking, I like baked goods, so that's always good. We showed you this week how to render pig lard, render out the fat for making like a really nice cooking fat. Tiru says, what happens to the skin? Does it melt too? So I didn't show in the video at the very end, when it's all rendered out, you have this big piece of pork skin. Some people, the way they render it, they cut it into much smaller sections, and those little things get dried up and crispy, and they get cracklings from that. When you do it like we do it, you don't get cracklings because it's such a big piece, it just doesn't get small and crispy. So for us, that big piece just gets tossed. It's got all the good fat has been rendered out of it. At that point, it's just like a bad piece of leather, and you just throw it away. You pull it out of the crock pot, throw it in the garbage. I don't have any use for it. I don't like to put rendered fat like in a compost pile or anything outside because I don't want my dogs getting into it. I've heard stories of dogs getting into rendered fat and things and it killing them. So stuff like that, I just throw it in the garbage and get rid of it. I don't want to worry about that or risk it. Jeanette, what's the best way to store the lard and how long will it keep for? It is true, lard is very shelf stable. People would know their grandmothers to keep a jar of lard right by the oven on the countertop, and they just take a spoonful of it when they're making bacon. This their bacon lard. They take a spoon of that and cook eggs in it, or just season your pan or whatever. Lard is very shelf stable. You can keep it on a countertop. But if you want it to last the longest, what we always do is our rendered lard, we put it in the freezer because the freezer makes everything last longer, and a couple pigs worth of lard will last us the year. We take one jar out of the freezer, move it to the fridge. The fridge keeps it a little bit more firm, so when you're scooping it out, it's a firmer. You can get a nice clear scoop. It's not kind of wet and sloppy. We don't leave it on the countertop. We leave it in the fridge. So from the freezer to the one jar that we're using in the fridge, and from that, the only thing, once in a while, if you don't use it, you will find a mold will grow on it. And that mold is not what you want to have. So if you see mold growing on your lard, then its life is over. Salem, watching how we did our lard, wants to know why we don't add water to the crock pot. She says, I understood that water helps keep the fat from going rancid as quickly. It evaporates out as it renders, but it keeps the fat at a more consistent and slightly cooler temp, so it oxidizes less. This is one of those things, Salem. Everybody has all these like special ways to do lard, and you got to cut it into cubes, and you got to do this and you got to do that. We've been doing lard for like 8 years now. And sure, this might be true. Adding water might make it more stable and last longer and help it oxidize less, all that stuff. It might be true. But we've been doing it this way for years. Just the big slabs, throwing it right in there, rendering it all out. It's so easy, it's so quick, and we go through all our lard. We'd never have it go rancid. Now again, like I said, we put it in the freezer, so maybe there's a difference there, and then we keep it in the fridge. If you're leaving all your lard out on a shelf somewhere, maybe there's a difference in that. But if you do it the way we do it and then you store it the way we store it, we've never had problems with this, and it's just one less step. Just throw your lard in the crock pot, turn it on, you're good to go. So for us, it's just a matter of it's simple and it works, and if it ain't broke, well, you know how that one ends. Demetrius wants to know, could you age domesticated birds like ducks or geese? Would there be any benefit? Love your channel. So Demetrius, yes, I believe you can age them, but you can't do it the same way you would. So again, you can age deer, you can age all kinds of meat, but you can't age them the same as a pheasant because geese and ducks are full of down. That is insulating. You will not get the meat cold enough just hanging them and aging them. You have to gut them, and you'd have to look into this more. I've never done it with ducks or geese. You might even want to pluck them first. I haven't looked into it, but I know Hank Shaw covers it in his articles, so you can check that out. If you just search aging pheasants on Google, you're going to find Hank Shaw's article. But you cannot treat them like a pheasant because the down, they're so big, geese are so big, and then they both have down, which is very insulating. They will not cool down enough. They will spoil if you hang geese or ducks on the side of your barn. So don't do it with geese and ducks. That is just something to do with like pheasants, chuckers, smaller wild birds like that. Sherry would love to hear the recipe for your bread coating for pheasant. Recipe's not mine, it's Hank Shaw's. Pheasant schnitzel. Hank is getting some serious airtime. If you go check out Hank on social media or whatever, tell him you heard about him on Homesteady. He was supposed to do an interview for our podcast. Then I stopped podcasting. We're going to start again this winter. Don't worry, we'll get to that. But anyway, Hank Shaw's pheasant schnitzel recipe. And for the breadcrumbs, all we did was just flour, egg wash, just the can of breadcrumbs you get at the store, breadcrumbs, and then fried it. So very simple, but really good schnitzel. I love a good schnitzel, and Hank Shaw's recipe was spot on. It was really good schnitzel. My kids loved it. There was no pheasant or chucker left. Just when you thought I'd answered all your questions on aging meat, birds, and guts and grossness, there's another one. Suze wants to know, when you're butchering the birds, how do you keep the flies/maggots away from the guts? Did that make sense? So yes, great question, Suze. The best way to do it, if you're aging your birds not in warm temperatures, you don't have to worry about flies and maggots. So if you're aging them on 50-degree days in the fall, flies are gone, they're not there. Now if it gets too warm, the flies show up. And that's a problem. You don't want flies buzzing around. Some people do to keep flies off an aging carcass, like a hot pepper spray. But for a pheasant, if it's hot out and there's flies around, throw it in the fridge. Have an aging fridge that you can, just a cheap fridge from Home Depot, put it in your garage, and that's where you hang and age meat in and birds in. We've done that in the past when it was warmer. But this time of year, we didn't have to worry about flies. There were no flies. And we hung ours inside of the barn. There's definitely no flies inside the barn this time of year, so it worked out pretty good for us. We definitely don't want flies and maggots on the meat. Now, aging deer, I have seen this happen, where if you age deer early season, it gets so warm, flies can get in at certain times of the day and you can get maggots. Doesn't mean the whole carcass is ruined, doesn't mean you gotta throw that whole deer out. Just cut off where you see maggots. It's okay. And then butcher that deer quick. If you're seeing maggots, the temperature's too warm for that deer to be aging, get that deer processed. But if there's maggots on a spot on the deer that's exposed, but you've kept your hide on, they're not going to be through all the meat and all over that deer. They're going to be on that local spot where the flies saw raw meat and got into it. So cut that, a lot of it, get rid of that. But if you left the hide on and the rest of the meat looks fine, it's still okay. If it hasn't gotten too hot and started to spoil, you're okay. It just means it was warm enough at the middle of the day that a fly landed and laid eggs. It's gross, but not all is lost. It seems gross, but don't worry. It's just cut away what's gross and move forward. I really like this last question. It especially applies to so much of what we talked about today. Amy says, I love your use appreciation of the scientific method in so many of your videos. I'm curious what your education is for this way of thinking to be so important to you. I'm a PhD candidate in social psychology, so I'm a researcher. And I feel like a bit of a homesteading misfit because I'm a scientist. I'm always curious about others who have pursued higher education. I'm only assuming you have and are also homesteaders. It's not an overly common combination of interests. All right. First off, Amy, this is a great question. I love this question. So she's essentially saying she sees in our videos we talk a lot about science and looking at really good data, and she feels that it's not an overly common combination of interests. And I'm going out on some limbs here. I'm just going to say some stuff because I feel like I know why she thinks this. But I also think, in that sense, I think Amy might not have her finger on the pulse quite as much as maybe... Well, let me explain. I think, Amy, there's a lot more of us who appreciate science, good real facts in the homesteading world than you know about. And I feel the reason why is because since I started Homesteady, we started as a podcast. We had Accountant Mike on from day one. Accountant Mike does not care about homesteading. He does not love, growing your own food or anything. He's a numbers guy. He's driven by like facts and numbers and is this real? And if not, get it out of my face. We always approached Homesteady like that, like let's take these traditional things that we like to do and maybe experiment with and try and see if they actually hold up to good hard numbers and facts and reality. And I have always found the audience of Homesteady to love that. So many people have commented over the years about our more scientific approach, our numbers-based approach, just the way we approach our show and what we present, the knowledge, how we make decisions. So many of the audience has said, I love that you guys look hard at the numbers. I love that you look at scientific studies. I love that you base not off of emotion and feeling, but this and that. So I know there are a lot more, Amy, out there like you and me who like real facts, good hard scientific method, math, all that for decision making. Now, so in that sense, I think there's more people out there than... It would surprise you how many out there are like homesteading and yet are like you, more scientific, just driven in that way. I just don't think it's portrayed as much by the people making the content, the people who are writing the articles, making the videos, because a lot of, I think, on the other side of homesteading, there is a lot of people who come to homesteading because they are getting away from mainstream and they don't trust the mainstream, they don't trust the food, they don't trust the scientists who are doing the studies and saying that, you should do this and this and that, this and that. There's a lot of people getting away from they don't trust any of the mainstream stuff, and so they're doing it all themselves. And when you get people who are not trusting of the mainstream and so they're going to do it all themselves, that's where they stop caring about what science says and what numbers there are to prove stuff. They don't care. They don't trust any of it. It's all money and it's all this and that, and so they're just going to do it all themselves. Homesteading attracts people who want to do it all themselves because of a lack of trust. And so I think a lot of the people who are creating the content don't take such a similar approach. Not all. There are people who do, but just not... There's like a split there. There's people who are like anti-establishment, and that's what's led them to homesteading. So now about a little bit more about me and higher education and that sort of thing. I love learning. I have an endless desire to learn more. When I get passionate about something, I dive in. I stay up late at night reading about it. I don't spend time entertaining myself with stuff that's not educational most of the time. So I don't watch sports. it's okay if you do. To me, that seems like a waste of my time. Like, I'd rather learn about, well, just yesterday I was reading about A2A2 milk and some studies behind A2A2 milk and what that's all about. And I'd rather be reading a research paper on A2A2 milk than watching a football game. Just me, just the way. Higher learning, yeah. I've been higher learning my whole life because I have been going for more information, more learning, more education than was traditionally served. I don't think college has a stranglehold on higher learning. And that's an area where I feel you can learn so much. You don't need an institution to teach you things. Now, someone like you you're a PhD candidate, I'm sure you have learned a ton through college. You've become very educated through that process. And it can educate people, absolutely. There is a lot of good knowledge out there you can get by going through higher learning schools, but they don't have the stranglehold on learning. You can higher learn through so many different venues. And in our day and age, knowledge is everywhere. You can learn so much off of YouTube and the internet that you could never in a million years have learned through 4 years of college because of the variety and just the depth you can tap into so quickly. But it doesn't mean it's all good, because as we know, not everything on the internet is good hard facts and good hard knowledge. So it's one of those areas that's tough. I did not go to college, nor do I care that any of my children go to college. I don't feel that that is the best way for everyone to learn. There are certain people who are primed for that. They love that way of learning. And if you're one of those people, Amy, awesome, because it's working for you. You've learned to the point, you're a PhD candidate. I'm sure you've learned a lot through that school. But I saw just as many of the people I went to high school with go off to college, party and drink and just go nuts and like graduate with a degree, and now they're working like a dead-end job, they're in debt. And so I think college is not the right route for everybody, but I do think public school pushes it to be the right route for everybody. They wanted everybody to go to college, but not everybody should have gone to college. There is a right person who's driven to learn in that setting, who wants to dive in and just absorb, to become a researcher, to become, if you want to become like a doctor or a lawyer, if that's the right path for you, that's the right path for you, but it's not the right path for everybody. And it wasn't the right path for me. I did not enjoy school. I have learned a lot in my life, but it has very rarely have I found that I learned much within the walls of a school. I have always dove into my passions and learned as much as I could, self-directed. Video editing and audio editing, and in high school, I went to all the classes for audio and video, and I was bored to tears with what I had to do for my assignments, because I already had taught myself that stuff a long time ago. So I would quickly do the assignment, and then I just spend the rest of the time using the equipment they had, the computers and the cameras, to make my own things, because I was already past that. I find self-directed learning, you can have higher learning, higher education through self-directed learning by finding yourself mentors. And that's finding people who know how to do what you want to do and then just diving into that. Having them guide you and them help you. That's higher learning. It's a higher than what you're going to get that base level at public school. It's not college. Sometimes it's college, but not always. Sometimes it's a mentorship program on a farm because you want to learn to farm, and boom, you just dive into it. Sometimes it's an apprenticeship because you just got a knack for, hands-on. You want to become a carpenter, become an apprentice to a master carpenter, and you will get some higher education from that carpenter. He will teach you amazing stuff. You'll become a master. So I just don't think, I value very much education, and I value higher education, but I don't think higher education is something that only a college can give. I think there's a lot of different venues. Now, when the way we apply the scientific method and the way that we approach our homesteading, I just think, unfortunately, the homesteading world is full of a lot of anti-establishment So you get a lot of people who just don't trust any of that. And the scientific method is a great method. When you say to yourself, like, I want to learn how this works, the scientific method can answer so many questions when performed properly. It doesn't mean science is perfect. It doesn't mean every result that you ever got from the scientific method is perfect. Remember, scientists hundreds of years ago believed in spontaneous generation. They believed that when it rained, boom, it rained, earthworms appeared from the water droplets, and that flies spontaneously appeared on meat. Based off what they could figure out at the time, it seemed to make sense. But then further along, the scientific method, which is a great method for learning, proved those things to be wrong and other things to be right. And it continually gets better and better. I think with science, all too often, people treat it like an unquestionable truth, where science is all about continually asking questions and pushing and learning and proving false what you once thought to be true. If you look at what knowledge 100 years ago compared to today, and 20 years ago compared to today, what we're continuing to learn, the scientific method is a great method for continual learning. We just can't then treat what we have concluded from our hypothesis and our tests like absolute truths. We have to keep asking and keep questioning and keep pushing. So myself, I'm kind of like a hybrid. I value that scientific method, but I don't treat science as the final say on everything. There's a sweet spot, I think, in the middle where you try to approach things like Accountant Mike, factually, scientifically, numbers-based. But when you find an answer, you don't then treat it like dogma. You keep asking questions and you keep pushing, and you wonder, could you find a better answer? And could things get even more true? And could you find more solutions? And you just keep probing and pushing. I'm going long on this one, but it's very much to I've built my life very different from mainstream. I've built my life based off of we talk sometimes about that pendulum. I'm not like, I don't believe 100% in everything the scientists say. I don't think that all scientists are bad and we have to go the complete opposite. Somewhere in the middle is there. I like the scientific method for finding out solutions and trying to answer our questions. I like reading scientific studies, but sometimes I still don't trust what they say, and I think I'm going to ask more questions and push for more truth, because that's all the leading scientists were always the people who didn't believe what had been concluded as truth. The leading scientists who always made the big discoveries said, you all think this is true, you all think the world is flat, everyone agrees it, but I just don't think that's true. So I'm going to keep applying the scientific method to that. And I think that's where we really can continue to learn and get higher education, not just from one source, a public school or from a college, but just from people who continue to ask, continue to push, continue to learn, and then continue to share that. And that's what drives us on this channel. We try to educate when we know stuff. We try to be educated continually when we don't. And you watch us, some videos present authoritative truths of what we've learned after a decade of homesteading. We have learned, boom, you got worms, go get some modern medicine and kill those worms, because it's proven to be better than not doing that. No question. But, you want to have the best tasting wild pheasant? While maybe the FDA would not approve of aging a bird on the side of a barn, a couple hundred years of tradition ain't going to steer people wrong in this case. So we try to keep learning and keep educating and learning and educating. Right now with our AI, we're learning. We're very new. We're trying to get these cows bred, and we don't know. This is new to us, and you're watching us learn and seek higher education. There are fans of the show who know more about us than things. We talk to them and we email them. We're involved in certain forums where there are people who've been at this for way longer. We talk to them. There are actual people in person that we have taken up as mentors throughout our life who guide us through these processes. We're always seeking a higher education, more education, better learning. And when we can then share that with you through the channel, we try to, whether it's us as the source or one of our mentors or another more knowledgeable source. I love learning. I love asking questions and finding answers. One of the things that's so great about YouTube is it's such a source of knowledge. Just got to make sure it's a good source, the source that you found. Because just because it's a nice looking video doesn't mean it's true. Anyway, we're going to shut it down. I know I said I didn't know how long I'd go because of my sore throat. But y'all know me, I love to talk. So I answered all the questions this week. If you want to get a question answered, hashtag #AskHomesteady. That's all it takes. And we'll try to get to your questions. Don't forget, we could really use your help if you live in Canada, Australia, or the UK. This weekend, try out amsteady.com or go to our website, thisishomesteady.com. In the menu, click on Amsteady. Sorry, excuse me. I hiccup burped there. That was gross. Click on Homesteady in the top menu. That'll bring you to a page where you can select your country and it'll forward you there. Email me, aust@thisishomesteady.com. Say, hey Aust, I gave it a shot. I purchased stuff on this day. I ordered this much stuff. And ask me and I'll check and see if it worked. And we together as a team can see if it finally worked. I am steady for the international, so that you can continue to help us do the show and we can continue to do the show if you value the show. And if you don't value the show, well, what are you still doing watching like an hour and 15-minute long episode of this show? So I think if you're watching right now, you value this show. Thank you so much. I'm finally losing my voice, so I'm gonna go. We'll see you next week.